Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sentence Diagramming 101. This is Chapter 4, Phrases, and we are on Part A, which is Prepositional Phrases. But this whole chapter, for Chapter 4, talks about three different kinds of phrases, prepositional phrases, appositives, and then verb phrases. And just a reminder, a phrase is a group of words that does not include a subject and a verb, like together. You may have a subject, you may have a verb, but you're not going to have both of them together in the same space. And that's what makes it a verb and not a clause. Clauses have subjects and verbs acting as subjects and verbs. So this is broken into three different sections. Prepositions are first, and this should be kind of familiar because we've been dealing with prepositional phrases this whole time, but here we are officially reaching them in the context of the book. But basically, a prepositional phrase is made up of a preposition, which is going to be one of these little words, an in, on, of, to, with, by, near, under, during, whatever. And you're going to have some sort of determiner or article, a, the, a, and it's going to be an adjective, right? And it's going to be working with the object of the preposition, which will be a noun or a pronoun, a thing. So you will have under the bridge, near the door, next to her would be a pronoun. So prepositional phrases are going to act as modifiers. So you have to decide if they are acting as adjectives, telling you which one or how many, or if they're adverbs.
Yep.
And remember, adverbs tell you how and when and why and where and in what manner. So when in doubt is probably an adverb because we love our adverbs in English. They're everywhere. But first, if it may be telling you which one or how many, so think about it. So let's look at this. If you've got a prepositional phrase acting as an adverb, it might tell you where. Jeff heard it on the radio, right? That's where he heard it. Or the book fell behind the cabinet. That's where the book fell. So it's where the verb occurred, right? Literally where. Or it might tell you when, right? Sam needs the report by noon. So that's when he needs it. The lights turn off at 10. So that tells me when. She is working with her friend. This tells me how. How is she working with her friend? Or he saved his paper on the computer. How did he save it? He saved it on the computer. You could also argue that this is where he saved it. So sometimes you're like the where and the how can get blended. It doesn't matter because they're both adverbs. And what we need to determine is whether it's an adverb. So where, when, how, or in what manner, they're all going to make your prepositional phrase an adverb. So she finished her paper by working slowly. That is the manner in which she finished it. Or she dances with grace. That is the manner in which she dances. Or if you wanted to simplify, you could be like, that's how she dances. Again, we're still in the adverb category. So how you get there really doesn't matter if you're like, oh, this is a where, this is a when, this is a how. Yes, those all bring you there, but you don't want to waste your time debating, is it a how or is it a where, when they're both going to be adverbs in the end. So you don't really need to distinguish. Now, on the other hand, prepositional phrases will also act as adjectives. So like her position at the company, this tells me which position, right? As opposed to her position, on the council or, on the committee or somewhere that's not the company. The book about dinosaurs, well, that's which book, right? That's the book that's popular, not all books, just that specific one. So it tells me which one. And then the traffic on the bridge wasn't heavy yesterday. Well, which traffic? The traffic on the bridge. The traffic on, my street or the street nearby might have been heavy, but the traffic on the bridge was actually pretty okay. And then sometimes you will actually have more than one prepositional phrase, sometimes even in a row. We like to stack these things. One of them may be an adverb while the other is an adjective. So you have to look at each one individually to decide what it is. Like her friendship with Jen, that's which friendship. So that's an adjective, but it began in first grade. That's when it began. So that is an adverb. So adverb, adjective. I waited under the bridge. Well, under the bridge is where you waited. So that's an adverb, but then it's near the park. I didn't wait near the park. I waited under the bridge near the park. So near the park tells me which bridge. It's the bridge near the park, not the bridge, by the highway or the bridge, over the river. It is literally the bridge near the park. So this one is an adjective. When you are diagramming diagrams, you've been doing this a little bit already, so this is kind of a review. But the first thing you always want to do is identify the word function. Put your prepositional phrases inside parentheses to mark them off. Find the preposition, the object of the preposition, the adjective, then determine what it's doing. This is where he heard it, so it's an adverb. And then once you look at the words that are left, you can say, oh, okay, Jeff is the subject, heard is the transitive verb, and then it is the direct object. So this is a Steve Doe. And then you diagram adverbs underneath the verb. So that's why it's there. If we keep going, we've got the book fell behind the cabinet. So book fell, this is a sitva, right? There's no object. And this just tells me where it fell. So it goes under the verb. Sam needs the report by noon. Sam needs report, another Steve Doe. But the prepositional phrase by noon is telling me when. So it's an adverb, goes under the verb. She is working with her friend, tells me how she is working. So it's an adverb, goes underneath the verb. And this is a sitva, it's just a subject and then an intransitive verb. Moving on, we've got the dancing one, right? She dances, another sitva, and this is how she dances, so it goes under the verb. Now we're moving into adjectives. The book about dinosaurs. Well, about dinosaurs is the book, right? Describing the book. Which book? The book about dinosaurs. So this one goes underneath the subject here, or the word book. Her friendship with Jen, right? So friendship with Jen is an adjective here, right? Prepositional phrase, acting as an adjective, telling me about that friendship. And then in first grade is an adverb, right? Prepositional phrase, acting as an adverb, because it tells you when, so it goes under the verb. So that's why these are separated like that. And notice on all of these, when you're diagramming, you should be able to read across the top, right? She dances, book was popular, friendship began, and you get the general sense of the language. It's not pretty because we're missing things like the, right, and her, but it makes sense. Reading across the top of your diagram should always make sense. If it doesn't, you've got something in the wrong spot. And then we've got the bridge, right? I waited is a sitva, and then I waited under the bridge. But remember, the bridge is the thing being modified with this adjective phrase. Which bridge? The one near the park. So sometimes you're just going to stack these suckers, and they're just going to keep going down the page. So give yourself room. Now, English loves exceptions, and here we are again. So while prepositional phrases usually aren't any like part of the sentence in terms of grammatical function, they're not objects, they're not complements. We have idioms, which are expressions that are common to a language that just don't have a literal translation, but mean something to those speakers. And we use these as complements on occasion. So like she felt under the weather. Under the weather here is actually a prepositional phrase, but you don't literally mean you are under the weather. Like when I went outside today, I stood underneath the weather that was in the sky, right? Like, no, under the weather is an idiom we used to mean to feel sick. So this is a description, right? She felt sick. So under the weather is a subject complement here describing she. If we keep going, we've got Sam was out of sorts. Out of sorts is another idiom that we use to describe feeling, disconnected or out of place, perhaps, just generally uncomfortable. You're not literally out of a thing called a sort. You're not like, gotta go to the sort store. I need more sorts. Like, that's not what you mean here. It's also not a place. You're not like, locked out of sorts again. Wish I had the keys. Like, no, that's not at all what this means. It's not a literal out of something. It is phrase that we use to just mean like out of it. And see, look, I just used an out of it would be another one of these idioms. It's a prepositional phrase, but we're using it as a complement, a subject complement here, describing Sam. We are out of butter. Same thing, right? You're not like I'm locked out of the butter dimension or something. You're just, you're out of butter. So out of butter is describing you. So it's a subject complement here. I'm not describing the we. So when you diagram a prepositional phrase that's acting as a subject complement, it gets weird, but diagramming itself gets weird. So just join me on this wonderful drawing example. What you do is you draw a little stand. It's like like you're drawing a person, a stick figure, but just the bottom half. And their head is where the diagram goes. Wherever the flat line on the diagram is, that's where it goes. So you're going to draw like a little half a stick man. We'll call it a stand. And then that supports the entire prepositional phrase, right? Under, whether, the, and that whole thing goes in the subject complement spot. So like out of sorts, right? Still acting as a subject complement, but it's a prepositional phrase acting as a subject complement. We don't see these very often, but when you do see them, they tend to mess with you because you're like, what is happening? Or out of butter. But here we get some more practice, right? So you're going to take some time, work your way through exercise 4A, diagram these prepositional phrases, and then check the answer key, because there is a video overview. There is just a static answer key where you can just look at the diagrams, or there's a video that walks you through how to do it. And that is 4A, prepositional phrases.